Any agenda adjustments? You're muted, Andy. We don't have any that I'm aware of.
No, we have none. I apologize. Didn't realize I
We
was
had
muted.
one that made the revised minutes.
Yep.
So it's been taken care of. All right, at this time, at 2.1 to approve the minutes, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes of the April 28th, 2021 Board of Directors meeting.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, moved and seconded. It was Joan and
Anyone.
Vicky.
Vicky, yep.
Any comments, additions, subtractions?
Mm-mm.
Remind everybody that we also post the Zoom meetings because minutes are somewhat abbreviated about discussions that take place. And so you want a little more information about what's in the printed minutes, you can go out and watch the Zoom presentation and see everything that was included. So if there's no other comments, then I'll ask for the vote, please.
All right. Bob,
Yes.
Jen,
Yes.
Robbie,
Yes.
Joan,
Yes.
Vicky,
Yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and Dory.
Yes.
Motion carries.
All right, thank you. So at this time, in accordance with our policy for comments to the floor, we're going to open this up for public comments. This is the time when the members of the public can express concerns or ideas or comments about our school system. It is not a time to go and personally attack any individual. We ask that you don't name students' names and even other parents. It's confidential material. If you have a complaint about somebody, we request that you take that through the proper channels, which is to contact the building principal and address it that way. And if that can't be resolved there, you have the ability to go to the superintendent for further. So just a couple of key things. We keep getting different people attending these meetings. It's great that we have a large attendance. If nothing else, this Zoom has broadened the number of people that actually attend the school board meetings and get the information firsthand. Whereas we used to get Sharon and Sharon, and that was about it from the public.
And Paul.
And Paul, well, Paul, she brought Paul along.
Yeah.
But it's good to see the number of people. So the board of directors meeting is not a public forum, but it is open to the public, and we provide opportunities for citizens to express their opinions and concerns related to matters under consideration by the board of directors. During the time allotted, members of the public may speak on any subject directly related to the operations of the school, except for personnel or personal matters or complaints concerning specific employees or students, which should be addressed through the established procedures. Speakers should not share secondhand information, make inflammatory comments, or use abusive or vulgar language. And no complaints or allegations will be allowed at these director meetings concerning any person employed by the school system or against particular students. Personal matters and complaints concerning students and staff will not be considered in a public meeting and will be referred to established procedures. There are a number of other things in our board. The last one that I'll mention is the chair of the board of directors has authority to stop any presentation that violates these guidelines or the privacy rights of others. So I ask everybody to be respectful. This is not a period of back and forth conversation. This is a period for the public to make comments. To do that, we will open up chat. The chats are directed only to the superintendent. So there's not a back and forth going on there. It's not a public forum for discussion. And you can either submit a question or a comment and the superintendent can read it, or you can say that you'd like to talk and he'll call on you. You can also raise your hand using the raise your hand function that you find down in the participants icon section, and you can raise your hand. So at this time, I'll open it up for public comments. give you a couple of minutes in case anybody's formulating something or putting something in chat.
I have nothing as of yet, Bob.
Okay.
I got a comment from Lindsay, who says, Lindsay Gannon, that says, I want to say I'm supportive of the plans, hoping for 5 days, and thank you all for your work.
No others? No
No
indication
others.
anybody's typing? Okay,
Nothing else.
then we'll move on. I will mention that if we have an item that comes up where it's appropriate, maybe for public comment, a particular item, we will solicit it then, and allow it then, after the board has done most of its deliberation. So we'll move on to petitions and communications.
I have none this evening.
I have received none as well. Report, superintendent's report.
Yep. So just briefly, I think probably everybody's seen the news by now. The Pfizer COVID vaccine has been approved for 12 and above. I know that places have started scheduling that. My own children are going on Saturday to Bangor to do that. One of the things that what I'm doing, I've emailed Maine General and St. Mary's. We did a COVID clinic with St. Mary's a couple of months ago for staff, but I've reached out to both to see if maybe we can host a clinic in RSU 4. So we will see what that looks like. It's not mandatory, of course, but we would like to offer that opportunity. So I will keep you all apprised of that. Once we have set something up, I will be sending notification out. I want to just share too that there is a lot of information on our website. And I think, we've done some reorganization of the website. There's some really good links. So, I would direct everybody when they have questions, certainly call us, but there's also a ton of information there with regards to reorganization, restructuring, the budget. We've got the budget presentation up there. We have the draft line by line item budget. I also have a link on there for budget feedback. If you all remember, we did not do a budget hearing this year. Per the governor's executive order, we didn't have to. It's going directly to referendum, but I would encourage anyone who has questions about the budget to go there, but they're certainly more than welcome to call our office and happy to talk budget with anyone. Lastly, make you all aware, Mr. Aliberti is not with us tonight. He is a proud new dad for a second time around, so congratulations to Marco. One of the things I just thought I'd share was the last couple of days I've spent working at Oak Hill High School because Marco's obviously out, and Sam had some family matters to attend to, so I played administrator at Oak Hill. It was an absolute joy. It really was. It kind of like reminded me of old times. We've got some great kids. We just do, and the staff is fantastic. So anyway, that concludes my report.
Oh,
Okay,
question?
I have a question. Yeah,
Well,
I have a question.
Okay.
What kind of baby did Marco and his wife have? They have a little girl.
They have a little girl. I believe he had a baby boy. So.
Oh, nice.
Yep.
Nice.
So congratulations to him. One more thing.
Oh,
to
yes.
share. We do have a resignation, Kim Rankin, custodian at Oak Hill Middle School. And then that Donna Wade should have been a retirement. Thank you, Donna, for your service to RSU 4. Donna worked here when I worked here years ago. She's been here a long time. She's given a lot to the RSU, and we really wish her well in retirement. So that's it.
Okay, any other questions? All right, seeing none, then Kathy, the director of CAI.
Hi, thank you for allowing me to speak tonight. First, I want to talk about today is National School Nurse Appreciation Day, and I just wanted to thank all our nurses. This certainly has been a tough year, and their job has definitely changed due to COVID. So we are super thankful for everything that they endured and are continuing to support administration, our students, and our staff through this pandemic. Another update on testing. I think this is May mayhem of testing. So we have AP testing going on. For our ELA and our math assessments for MEA, we are in the makeup sessions at this point. For some students, they are getting the in-person version if we could not get them to do the remote. As well as our staff are gearing up in grades 5, 8, and 11, and our staff are learning how to proctor the MEA Science, which will happen next week. Big shout out to our tech world, and NJ for all of the rostering and tech support to make this a smooth process. NJ has a really cool picture of one of our proctors having like 3 screens and working through all of our dashboards that you have to do even when students are in person doing the testing. So just a lot of work with administrators and our tech world to pull this off in a hybrid model. So just kudos to everyone in that. This week has also been high on testimony. The legislators, this on Monday was big on curriculum pieces. So I tended to pay more attention to those pieces. There's a lot of referendums or bills that are trying to get passed about requiring us to teach Holocaust, African American, and genocide. We do have a process in the state that does not mandate specific topics and programs, which is some of what these bills are requiring. So they'd be unfunded mandates. So that's something I always kind of pay attention to. We have a nice process in the state of Maine. There's local control about what curriculum and which programs you use. And there's a process to incorporate topics through a pretty vetted process in particular subject areas. So we're keeping a close eye on that. There's also another one about restraints and seclusions. We'll get some more information on what that will look like for next year. The other one that was in work session today was on vaccinations. It's looking like they're trying to table the bill that was passed last year. As I've been mentioning, that we're trying to remind our families that the medical exemption, and we have that form on the website for those parents that are looking to have exemption. But what the bill that was being worked on today was those students who have the philosophical or religious exemption now could continue that exemption throughout. We'll see how that wording goes through the sessions. As Andy said, he substituted, I guess, at the high school. I did as well. I started my day at the high school and finished in Litchfield, and it just brings you back to your why, reminding you your why. There's nothing better than singing and dancing in pre-K, reading books with first and second graders. So it just reminded me of the good old times and just reminded me of my why. So that is all for this evening. Thank you.
Any questions, Kathy? All right, I don't see Riley on here. Riley, are you here?
I don't either.
Okay, so no student report. He's probably quite busy this time of year. I mean, all the activities and playing lacrosse and other things. So other reports, Kathy, you're going to give us a rundown of corporate portrait of a graduate.
Yeah, so over the last year and a half, I've been sharing the process about our portrait of grad, and Battelle for Kids has completed our summary report, which was added to the board packet. So I just wanted to highlight a few things just for the board to be aware. My partner in crime, Marco, was really instrumental in getting this process and also figuring out what our next action plan was. So this whole portrait of the grad was just really about the planning process. And so if you look, I'm starting on page 14, that's really the next steps as we're heading into. We had a lot of feedback from different stakeholders in different stages. We had from 400 that picked the competencies that were listed in the portrait. Our final visual is on page 11 and 12. So that's kind of what the graphic designer had picked. And if you saw the kind of the drafts ahead of time, we had students that did a competition to get their representation of the competencies. So we gave out the competencies and students came up with some ideas. We took their ideas and brought it to a graphic designer, and that's what the graphic designer did on page 10 and 11 and 12. So the 6 competencies that were picked were responsibility, communication, critical thinking and problem solving, perseverance, empathy, and leadership. As a WMEC, that's how we got the grant. We were the first district to complete the process. We're waiting for the others to do that, and we're going to kind of crosswalk the competencies that they picked, and then we'll start to be able to plan some professional development under these competencies. But in terms of what does this mean in this process for RSU 4? Our plan is to kind of work on a portrait of a student, a portrait of an educator, and a portrait of a system. We have some pieces that we feel like we could tighten up or strengthen in communication in terms of like our curriculum. We have habits of work, but how we grade it and how we empower students, allowing students to showcase things that they do outside of school, inside of school as well. So those skills that they can use after they graduate in their post-secondary. So we just wanted to kind of showcase some of the things that we're going to work on and give a typical timeline that we would continue to work on starting in the fall. So any questions about that? I just wanted to wrap it up because I've been talking about it for about 1.5 years now. So I wanted to give you the final report.
Any questions, comments?
I think it's great. It really gives you a much clearer picture of what's going on with the students.
It was really interesting too, was that the 6 competencies we picked are perfectly aligned to the main guiding principles that we are required to do. So it was just nice to kind of see that we already have this happening in our schools already, but it's just to highlight and making sure that we're intentionally teaching them. So it was a nice process. Yep.
It really, and just to piggyback on that, it was a fantastic process to go through. I mean, if you think about this, Kathy and I actually heard a presentation on this in January of 2019, correct, Kathy?
Yes.
And to see this to fruition to now through the WMEC, through the work with the Bar Foundation has just been some of the most quality work I've been involved in a long time. It was really good stuff.
Yes.
And I noticed on the front, it says it was delivered to RSU 4 in March. Was that from the consultants who put it together?
Yeah, so it was delivered to, correct. So it was given to us by Battelle, and then we did some edits and they just didn't change the date. So we did some edits from March and April, and we had a meeting in April, and now we can present it here.
Okay. All right. I had a couple other comments, but they are just minor things, so I'll just send you something on them. It was an interesting read. I can see a lot of work went into it, and it can provide some guidance and, as it called it, the North Star.
Mm-hmm.
So we can try and find our way to prepare our students for success in the future. Any other questions or comments? So that will be published out on our website?
Correct.
Okay, so anybody in the community that wants to read it, it's 19 pages, but a couple pages are references. I found one of the more helpful things was at the very end in the appendix where it talked about what was involved in each of the competencies or the words that we were using. So I encourage people to read it. There's always an opportunity for people to provide feedback on these types of things because they will impact the young people in our community and our community as a whole going forward. All right, move on to old business. 6.1, entertain a motion to approve directing the superintendent to negotiate a contract with CHA Architects for an addition to Oak Hill Middle School.
So moved.
So moved. Second.
Okay, it was moved by Robbie, seconded by Joan.
Joan.
I believe.
Okay, seconded by Joan. Any comments? We had our presentation 2 weeks ago.
Yep.
And as our normal business, we don't normally just act immediately. We allow information to get out for us to think about it.
I think it's important to note this is the first step, negotiating a contract. The next would be CHA would come in and start working with us, our staff, the Finance and Facilities Committee on what a potential addition would look like, and it'll build from there. So unfortunately, in the state of Maine, you're not allowed to do a design build. We have to hire an architect. And so this is the first step in that process.
Right. And I also want to add to that, even when they have completed their work, that does not necessarily mean, and it's not necessarily a given, that the addition will be built, or that if the addition is built, that schools will be closed. I know that the school board has been talking about this for years. Was contacted today by a member of the press,
As was I.
interested in our reorganization and referring to this particular article on our agenda. And I referenced him out to our website so that he could read about what our reorganization plan is, both in the fall and what we're kind of looking at in the future, in order to provide the best educational opportunities and environment that we can for our students. And just told him the same thing, that even though this passes, it doesn't mean that it's going to result in a build or it's going to result in closing of any schools. This is just a step that the board needs to take early in its planning process, based upon the direction the board in the past has wanted to go and currently continues to want to go in that direction. So are there any other comments? If not, I will briefly open it up to the public, because this is an item that people seem to be interested in. If there are some comments from the public, I'd ask that you please enter something in the chat room or raise your hand. Allow the superintendent to call upon you to speak or read your comment, whichever is the case.
I have nothing at this point, Bob.
Okay. There's no other comments from the board. Then I'll call for the vote.
Oh, sorry. I was looking at, we did get, sorry, I just got a direct message in that says from Jen, I find the amount of swaps at a young age very concerning. So that was a comment that we got.
Okay.
All right. That being said, you calling for the vote?
I am calling for the vote.
Okay.
This is on hiring their contract with
Architects. Yep. Bob?
Yes.
Jen?
Yes.
Robbie?
Yes.
Joan?
Yes.
Vicky?
Yes.
Stephanie?
Yes.
Andrea?
Yes.
Joe?
Yes.
And Dory?
Yes.
Motion carries. Thank you so much. I will keep you apprised of the process.
Okay. Thank you. 6.2. This is going to be a CPT update and a draft of the fall reopening plan for board feedback. So there's nothing that's going to be approved on here. This is just going to go over what took place at our CPT meeting last week and the draft plan that's come up to try and get us back to 5 full in the fall. For the public that's out there, because we are asking for your inputs, we are providing a place for you to do that. And we would certainly like your comments between now and the 26th of May, so that the CPT will have those for consideration when we review where we are again on the 27th. We won't have per se public comments here, because we're going to provide that opportunity where we can actually get them in writing, hopefully, and have them as part of our packet to go and consider and any changes to this draft plan. So this is an opportunity for the board, who has received this, I think, yesterday, to have taken a look at it. It's going to be presented now to ask any questions and make any comments that the board member feels might be appropriate. So with that being said, we'll get into the update.
Sure. So I will start. I'm going to give an update of our last CPT meeting. And then Kathy will take us through the first draft of the fall plan. I think it's important to note, I think you all know I sent a letter out last night to the community, letting them know that the CPT team is meeting. One of the things I have done is added 3 parents to our CPT team. So Will Fessenden, Sherry Rosignol, and Brandy Deshane Rand will be joining us starting on the 27th. The other thing is I've added a high school student. Lexi Finn will be joining us as a high school student. So we're excited to have her input as well. So I got to share my screen here. All right. All right. So the CPT met on 5/5. And the first thing we talked about was the updated travel requirements. Wow, my computer is having issues here. So beginning on May 1st, the governor has ordered that all states are exempt from quarantine and testing requirements that were previously in place. International travel still has restrictions. So if there are questions, always call your child's school or call your building administrator. The CDC and the governor's office have let us know that they do reserve the right to change these for individual states at any time, depending on what the metrics look like in those states. So we watch those pretty closely. We get blasts from the DOE all the time. Obviously, as we all know, the mask guidelines have changed a little bit. The outside mask mandate has been lifted for vaccinated persons, or if persons can maintain social distancing. Also, the MPA has lifted the mask requirements for athletes during competition outdoors. We had a lot of conversation about this, regarding recess, things like that. What we've decided to do at this point, we're going to continue to wear masks at recess due to the inability to maintain social distancing. It's really hard at recess, especially with our younger ones, to maintain 6 feet. They like to play. And obviously we want them to play. We are going to follow the MPA guidelines for athletes. One of the things that we did talk about, and we're starting to set up now, is we are going to start encouraging the use of outdoor spaces as the weather gets better. And we are setting up outdoor learning spaces at all of our buildings where students can maintain social distancing and take mask breaks. Teachers are going to be able to self-determine and give mask breaks when necessary, and we are developing an SOP for that. I met with Glenn yesterday or day before, and we're looking at different chairs to have outside. Those are on order, and depending on where we are, some covering. So I'm excited to see those go up. Something to note. So as you all know, we've been notifying every time we've had a COVID case regarding close contacts, no close contacts. I think those have become a little overwhelming. Other school districts have done this. So moving forward, we're no longer going to be sending notification via letter and phone when there is a positive case. One of the things you will note is the website will now have a COVID-19 dashboard that shows the information of cases, close contacts, and a list of all current and former cases. I will be sending out a shout point that when this happens, we'll be notified by email with a link to the dashboard for more information. I will be sending a letter to the community regarding this change. Obviously, we will let buildings know internally if there is a case, because if there are close contacts, we have people inside the buildings that will need to know. We also talked about fall of 2021. We are planning for 5 days. Obviously, the board is going to see and got a copy yesterday of a draft plan for fall. One of the things we talked about was reorganization is going to help us level out class sizes to have the space to come back full time. We're looking at how we can contract classes at the high school, add more sections to reduce numbers, as well as potentially changing course locations within the building. And again, the CPT sent the board a first draft proposal, and then we will be sending out to all stakeholders, students, and we've already sent to staff and community members to give feedback on the draft with more information to come. Lastly, we talked about close contact tracing, end of year events, playground cleaning and use, and sports. And we really, and we're going to continue to follow MPA guidelines, but we didn't make any changes to the current model of these topics. I really enjoy these meetings. They're a good way for us to talk through ideas, talk through new guidance. Bob is a member of that team. And I'm excited to add our parents, our 3 parent representatives, and our student rep, because I think they're going to bring a really great perspective. Any questions about that? Robbie?
Yeah, Andy, did you have any discussions about vaccinations for 12 and under? I mean, for 12 and over starting?
Well,
As
yeah,
far
we haven't yet, because that, when we met, that hadn't come out yet. We had heard preliminary, but we will be talking about it at the next meeting.
Okay.
Yep. Anything else? No? All right. I will turn it over to Kathy.
Do I have sharing rights?
You do. I gave you some power.
Somebody has a hand up.
I think that might be me. I have a question about the re-leveling of the classes. It sounds like we're gonna limit the number of students in the class, which wouldn't that create more classes? Which wouldn't that mean we need more teachers?
Do you want me to answer that, Andy, or you?
Yeah, well, I'm looking to Bob because we hadn't.
I
opened
wasn't
up
sure we were
public comment.
taking comment.
Right. I mean, that's not part of what we were, the CPT. We're talking about the fall and how we want to get there. The reorganization, this is the update that's going to come up, is going to talk about that. I would certainly encourage you to submit that concern in the form as feedback to this update that we're going to go over here. It's a valid question. We have answered that at previous meetings in the open forum on how that works. But we'll take that input and use it as the CPT goes and looks this over, and as the board continues its deliberations on what we're going to do for the fall and into the future.
Okay, sorry I asked at the wrong time, but I guess real quick, how do I eventually get my answer? If they're gonna review it, are they gonna send me an answer?
Yeah, so I'll share that once I continue my presentation, and I will be able to answer that.
And certainly, if you want to give my office a call, I'd love to have the conversation with you.
Yep, but I'll show you where you can add that, and you'll see the answer for sure.
But I think his question was, were we going to give him an individual answer after we received everybody's inputs and we come up with a plan? I would say that would be a no. It would be to stay tuned to our website, where we publish our reorganization plans and our updates for the fall 2021 school semester. Also continue to attend school board meetings where they'll be discussed. We may get 300-400 different inputs, which would be nice in some ways. And I can't see that we can be going back and making individual contacts on each one of those, because many of them will be somewhat similar. But that's your rest assured, your comment will be seen by the people on the CPT committee and will be considered. They may, and sometimes the questions, I think in the reorganization plan that we've already put on the website, kind of addresses your question about how we're going to do that. So I suggest maybe you go out and look at the reorganization plan website, and there's a community forum that was done in February or March that talked about it. I think does a fairly decent job of explaining an answer to that question.
Okay, unfortunately, I'm kind of new to finding all this out, so I got a lot of questions. So I guess contacting Andy is going to be the best thing, from what I understand, to try to get some answers to stay on top of this. that
Sure,
accurate?
You're more than welcome to contact me. I would, like I said, point you to the website as well. There's a ton of information on there, but certainly you can always give me a call.
All right, so are we gonna talk about the reorganization at all, or was that at the beginning when unfortunately I was consumed? No?
Um,
I'm going to touch upon it very quickly, very
Yeah,
shortly.
it's just
very
a brief
briefly,
part of
though.
this presentation. The reorganization was discussed at the board in January and February, and was kind of determined then as we were starting to move forward on how we were going to reorganize for the fall. Those decisions were made back then. Community forums were conducted where it was people were invited to attend. That was a topic that was listed for the forum. And that happened as well as at school board meetings. So the reorganization plan as for the fall is pretty well set. We're already making plans to make that happen. It takes a lot of work to do, get everybody moved around. So that's, that's where we are on the fall reorganization plan currently. And I would again encourage you to go out and look at that forum and look at the information. So, and then if you have questions or further questions, then please get a hold of Andy.
Okay, I didn't mean to waste anyone's time. I feel like if I do have concerns, it doesn't kind of matter at this point because it's already processed what's happening.
So there is a
would-
document on the website that outlines the difference between a restructure, a reorganization, and the fall plan, and where you can add feedback, what was already decided, what is in the future, and where you can add feedback. So that document might be really helpful, and it is right on the front page of the reorganization piece.
We did streamline a bunch of things on the website today, so it's a little easier to find.
Right, and you weren't wasting anybody's time. You have valid points.
definitely
We
not.
just want to make sure that people get informed, but we need to, stay on topic that we have on our agenda at the meetings and provide opportunities for people to get answers to their questions outside of the meeting.
So I can appreciate and respect that. Unfortunately, during the day, I'm gonna, unfortunately be working. I'd love to be able to talk to Andy to find out a little bit more, and I'll try to view the website. It's been a little bit confusing. It was a little hard to get on the website on the Zoom meeting tonight, but I'll do my best and I'll be in contact, I guess, with Andy as soon as possible.
Fantastic.
All right, Kathy.
Okay, so what we have provided is a framework for our suggestions for the fall of the 2021 year. I will say that as I kind of outlined the timeline of where we're headed. However, we had a meeting with the Deputy Commissioner of the Maine Department of Education today, and he kind of insinuated that we might see a preview of what the DOE will have for recommendations for the fall, and that would be released as early as Friday. So although we have this timeline, that information will be really critical as we head into that CPT meeting on May 27th. So our current timeline is we're going to get feedback from the board tonight in order to make updates to the plan tomorrow, and we would be sending out to our community stakeholders, our students and our family, putting it on the website as well as social media to gather feedback from now till May 26th. We have previewed it with our staff, and they have graciously given us some great feedback already. More specific questions that are related to staff that not necessarily community members would ask. So we'll certainly add those pieces as we kind of go forward. So our plan is that we would be meeting as a CPT team on the 5/27 and looking at all the feedback from all the stakeholders, and then making a recommendation on June 9th at the Board of Directors to update a fall plan, knowing that as the DOE updates throughout the summer, we might need to address different changes by August. We have a couple of links, and those links are also on the website. And this will be a PDF where you actually will have clickable links as well. The first one is a Google form, and that's where you can add your thoughts and your suggestions for us. The CPT team did last time. We've given surveys out to parents and to staff members. We look at every single suggestion or question, and we try to address them. So please make sure if you have thoughts or feedback that you fill out the Google form that's attached. As we suggested that this plan is to go 5 days in person. We also wanted to ensure that our parents understood that our timeline. So August 2nd, our parents would find out their student placements and their course selections. And at that same time, we would be giving information about open house, what that will look like, and any parameters that we might have regarding open house with our families coming into our buildings. Our calendar's already been set. So September 1st is our first day of school for K-9 and LRTC. And then September 2nd is our first day of school for pre-K and 10 through 12. Labor Day is late. So Labor Day, September 6th is no school. So those are just important dates as people are starting to plan for the fall. A regular planning process, as we have done since the fall, or actually really since the spring of 2020, has been getting feedback from stakeholders, getting information from the DOE, making a plan and sending it to the board. That process has not changed since the pandemic has begun. And we're going to continue that same process. Although Andy did allude to that we're adding some more stakeholders as we had at the very beginning. But this check and adjust process through the school year, we had a smaller team, but now we're going to expand it. So we still currently have to abide. So the recommendations of like the advisory system, the color coding is just a recommendation, but the requirements when we sign the dotted line to accept money, we actually have to follow these 6 guidelines. And we've been hearing about them, but things have changed throughout the year. And mass breaks is a great example. First, there was you could have mass breaks and you couldn't have mass breaks, and now we can institute mass breaks. There is talk about changes maybe to indoors, but we'll find out what those directives are soon. Similar to the physical distancing, had changed from 6 feet to 3 feet, and we made those adjustments when we did our planning and our ratios in our classrooms. The administrative team, as well as the custodial staff, have went into every single classroom. They identified what the maximum capacity was if you fit the 3-foot rule for having our students. And then we took our placement numbers and we figured out how many students would actually be in there to ensure that we could actually offer a 5-day in-person option. We will continue to do good hand hygiene, as we know that a lot of our things, as we move forward, we've been finding out that COVID cannot be transmitted through objects. So good hand hygiene reduces that, but it allows us to offer different activities for our students to share more manipulatives and in games and such. So some of the ways that we do clean will continue and go back to our regular sanitation. On the right-hand side is a spot for questions. And we've been asked a lot of questions regarding if Andy gets phone calls or I get phone calls or we get emails. If there's questions that are continuously coming up, we have started a frequently asked document. And so this is also posted on the website. This link will bring you right to that frequently asked document with all of the question and answers that we have so far. That doesn't mean we'll answer all the questions, but the ones that seem to be coming up more frequently will be listed here. If you have a question, you're welcome to submit it in this Google form. And if it's one that we see frequently, we'll add it to the FAQ. Again, this will be a PDF that you'll be able to quickly link and click the link, and it will bring you to those, as well as they're linked on our website. So our plan, so I know some people are looking for lots of details, but ultimately this is a framework and the details are really dependent on specific to the buildings about how certain things happen. So we know that we are going to reorganize. That was already voted in. In here, we did put the structure, as well as Andy did put it in his letter yesterday. We also did put an icon on the website and through social media today, just to remind. This allows us to have an essentials class in each grade level, and 5th and 6th creating a team atmosphere. So it's like a 5-6 team and a 7-8. It does reduce our class sizes in most of our grade levels from the 20 to 25 to that 15 to 20. It also allows us to have some better programming. for all our students, and consistent education experience, because all our learners of one grade level and all our educators of one grade level will be under one roof. So we did put the structure in there. That is not up for negotiation in terms of this plan, but we did want to add that as it is part of our fall 2021 plan. One of the pieces that is still needed working is the remote learning component. In here, you'll see a remote learning and also a full remote cohort D option. The remote learning, that piece in that section of our plan is really discussing about if a student has to quarantine, or if we have to have a storm day, for example, if we had to call off school, we could have a remote day, a remote learning day like we did throughout this past year. It was something even pre-pandemic that this board had discussed. And so we want to make sure that our families know that that remote learning day could still be an option. Obviously, if you lose power or there's differences of babysitting, you can still call out that day. The other piece of the full remote cohort D option, at this point, we are not expecting to offer a cohort D option. We have explored a remote learning academy with WMEC, but in terms of the cost and the expectations, RSU 4 at this point doesn't feel that it can go forward with that academy. We do ask that if your child has a health concern and the needs continue to be fully remote, we have talked about a specific process in order to reapply, and it's a pretty rigorous process in order to be fully remote. And if you have concerns or you want to talk about that process, to contact me, and we'll go through what our thinkings are. In terms of transportation, we alluded this a little bit ago that right now there's no guidelines in terms of what capacity we need. It just says do not fill the bus. And they did reduce on April 28th a lot of the restrictions or the guidelines on the bus. But we are still going to be asking parents in a survey this summer if they can transport their students. It will alleviate the numbers on our buses. Moving our 5th grade into the middle school, high school run actually does help our bus runs because it does reduce the amount of students on our elementary run. So we will have a survey later on in the summer months regarding this request. And as always, as a commitment, we're working with stakeholders, ensuring our learning spaces are safe, and we're trying to strive for the best educational experience as we're moving forward into the fall. The last page, and this is a start. I do have some additions that I will be adding if it's okay with the board. So it just kind of goes through some of those guidelines that were added in the March 28th and discussed at CPT. Currently, we're saying that masks are still required indoors, and we will have mask breaks built in. We are going to still maintain social distancing, that 3 to 6 feet at all times. And hallways and common areas will have signage, and students will still have that safety physical distancing when we're eating lunch and unmasked times like snack as well. Each area will have a maximum capacity until things change indoors as directed through schools. In terms of meals, we are following the CDC guidelines. They're still 6 feet apart. Students may still bring food from home or have a school provided meal. Transportation, right now it's 1 per seat. We will look at that and continue to see what the guidelines are, maybe even as early as Friday, to see if that will change. Students will still have access to the different learning platforms. We will continue those. So Seesaw, Google Classroom, so they will be able to access their learning if they should go into quarantine, or if we have a remote learning day, and parents will be able to access the students' assignments and feedback from their teachers. All students in RSU 4 pre-K-12 will be issued a device. Some grades will take the devices home daily. Others will take it in when they know there's an event that would warrant a remote learning. In the event a student is remote, they will be able to bring the device home to access their learning platforms. As discussed on snow days, due to federal regulation waivers, we'll be able to offer our food service. That seems to always be whether we can do remote snow days or not. Because of the waiver that goes through next year, we will be able to offer snow days as a remote learning day, and which means our calendar will stay pretty stagnant. Sick. So just like this year, it doesn't mean that we will follow a pre-screener, but good rule of thumb, even pre-pandemic, is if someone is exhibiting symptoms, they're asked to stay home and monitor their symptoms. Cough, sore throat, temperature of 100.4, shortness of breath, loss of sense of taste, or living with someone sick should mean that you stay home. We certainly been seeing a lot more allergies. Ironically, about 80% of our COVID cases right now are students that actually presented with allergies or actually were with their doctor being described as allergies and ended up being COVID. So we just want to be monitoring if there's any symptoms to stay home at this point.
I know, sure is.
In terms of vaccination,
See ya.
in terms of vaccinations, we are currently not requiring any COVID-19 vaccinations. So I want to be clear that the state still has laws about other vaccinations, but in terms of the COVID-19, we are not requiring this at this time. If a student is deemed a close contact, we do ask for documentation to see if they're fully inoculated in order to not have to quarantine. At this time, that's the only time we ask for documentation of vaccinations. Is to not quarantine. And as Andy stated in the CPT updates, that we will continue to follow the MPA guidelines. There are 6 other things that I will be adding to this update. The first one is currently our UAs, our unified arts, like our arts and our music and our phys ed, are not in their classrooms. Next year, we continue we were going to allow them to be in their classrooms. We do continue to encourage our physical education to go outside as much as possible. We did find that as a pandemic perk that our students were outside more than not. So our UAs will be able to go in their classrooms. As mentioned, the mask breaks, we will develop an SOP that fits into the guidelines. As Andy had stated, that we are looking at outdoor spaces. Although in Maine, we have very short months that we can do that. We are looking at creative ways and also creating SOPs in each of the buildings to make sure there's a sign up and making sure that teachers know when they can use those outdoor spaces. This past year, we did not have students use lockers. Next year, we will allow the students to use their lockers as needed. There will still have to be some guidelines to making sure that their students are in a rotation. So instead of, let's say Mrs. Ireland's class, instead of maybe them all in a row, Mrs. Ireland's class might have every other locker. So if her class goes out all at one time, they're still distanced within 3 feet. So we'll be creative on how we do our locker assignments in order to allow students to have their lockers. Similar to we've had their student belongings, it is still recommended that students have their belongings separate. So students had their own tubs or their own crates. So we'll continue to do that. But there's a little bit more leeway in what they're sharing materials like math games, as long as they wash their hands before and after. And then the vaccinations, we're just going to continue to update that as we get it, if we end up offering either shots or testing later on. So that is what I have for the framework.
I think it's important to, with it, again, this is a draft. So we're looking for feedback now. We'll then be sending it out to the community for feedback. And then it'll go to the CPT team for work on it, taking the feedback to then come to the board for full approval. I really think it's important that we understand that there are some things here that we are at the mercy of the Department of Education, the CDC, the governor. So, things change throughout the summer. Certainly there may be things that we can't address, that we may be told that we have to do, but as those come, we will take a look at them.
And I will say there are things that we have not put in this plan because we need to have more guidance. Like, for example, a use of our facilities for, outside our communities. So that those will be things that once we get that guidance, we can bring to the board.
Any comments from the board members? Suggestions? Robbie?
Yeah, what about lunchtime, Kathy? Are we still required to be 6 feet apart during
Yes.
lunch?
Yeah, so unmasked times for eating right now is 3 feet, 6 feet. It sounds like some of the guidance might change that's coming out, but I can't guarantee that it will be addressed or change. But like I said, the faster I get it, the quicker that I'll share with the board what those updates are.
And I think too, we, as Kathy mentioned, we met with the deputy commissioner today, the Western Maine superintendents, and we asked a lot of these questions, and the response was stay tuned. So we'll hear them soon, I hope.
Robbie, you had another question?
Yeah, I just want to stress that this is, for us, a fluid situation. And I know the community wants to get hard and fast answers, but we will try to do our best to get them to you as soon as we can. And, between end of school, which is June 7th and 8th, and the start of school, which is September, a lot can happen. So I'm just asking everybody to try to stay as informed as you can, and we will try to keep you informed.
So when we met today with the other superintendents, Andy and I specifically asked, when are they rolling out their plans and bringing it to the board? And some, like Auburn, are bringing it out next week and voting on the first week of June. And some others, like Poland, are not even doing a formal plan till August. So it is varying. And so we're trying to give our first draft. We know that's why it says draft all over it, because I think we're going to have some adjustments, as we have every 3 months, some updates as this pandemic has moved forward. So we'll continue to update.
I guess I would just also like to reiterate what Robbie has said, but coming from working in other districts, I find that RSU 4, we are being as absolutely proactive as we can be in listening to all of the stakeholders. And really, I mean, if you asked any one of us, yes, we want kids in school just as much as anybody else, trust me. But again, just exactly what Robbie said, this is a very fluid situation, and there is a lot of time where a lot of things can be changed or have to shift. And so be patient and know that we are advocating just as much for things to really meet the needs of everyone as absolutely best and safely as we can.
All right, so we're really looking here for any comments for like changes or modifications to the plan. Just because this is kind of for the board right here, and then we're opening it up to the public tomorrow, does not mean that a board member who comes up with an idea between now and the 26th can't also submit it. All right, so that it can be considered by the CPT. So we're not limited to be able to provide our input solely to tonight. So, and I know that many of you got it yesterday, sitting on the CTP board gave me an opportunity to have this information a little sooner. But I think it's well thought out. So if anybody has comments or suggestions for changes to the plan now, we would encourage those. Board members, we would encourage those. And take time, come up with some things, questions, submit them. Not only your board members, but your members of the community. And so you have that same ability as any other community member to speak up at any time about issues. And I encourage us all to be active members of our school community, not just at the board meeting. So does anybody have any other comments?
When you get to that rung and I don't want to cut himself on it. Can you see?
I would like to go and mention that in there was the on the one slide that talked about some of the advantages, it talked about reducing class sizes. It makes it look like all our classes are 2025 and we're going to reduce them. Maybe we can make clear that, we currently have class sizes in some places that are 15 to 16 students, and then we have some that are in their 20s, and our reorganization will allow us to get them all under 20 as is the goal. So that it's a little clearer because, I mean, that's the genesis of questions that we do get. How can we get our classes?
And it doesn't.
So somebody out there has got their microphone on and a lot of talk going on. If you could mute yourself, it would be helpful. All right, if there's no other comments from the board, then we will move on. And as I had mentioned earlier, but I've seen people have come and gone through the meeting. So normally we open it up for public comment. Since this is going to be released to the public tomorrow, all stakeholders, and there's links to go and provide inputs and ask questions, we're going to allow that process to be followed. That way we can have them in writing, we can collect them, and we can have them all kind of gone through and put in order and everything for the CPT meeting. So we're not trying to deny anybody their ability to provide inputs or ask questions. We just ask that you would do it using one of the Google Forms or make a phone call, either to a school board member or to the administration, and register it that way, and we will get those all included into the package. All right, that being said, we'll move on to new business. 7.1, I'll entertain a motion to approve first-year probationary to second-year probationary teacher contracts, the list that was attached.
So moved.
Second,
Moved by Joan, seconded by Vicky. Any comments? Seeing none, I'll call for the vote.
Bob,
Yes?
Jen,
Yes.
Robbie,
Yes,
Joan,
Yes.
Vicky,
yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and Dory.
Yes.
Motion carries.
Thank you. 7.2, entertain a motion to approve third-year probationary to continuing teacher contract. The list attached.
So moved.
second,
Second,
Moved by Joan, seconded by Robbie.
Yep.
Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
Bob,
Yes?
Jen,
Yes.
Robbie,
yes,
Joan,
Yes.
Vicky,
yes.
Stephanie,
Yes.
Andrea,
Yes.
Joe,
Yes.
and Dory.
Yes.
That also carries. Thank you very much.
All right. I don't know if we have any committees to report. Finance Facilities meets next time.
yes, next time, Bob, next meeting.
Any other committees have any reports tonight?
No.
Kathy, right?
Nothing for personnel.
CAI met, I'm sorry, CAI met tonight and we had the, I'm losing my words, Kathy. We had, thank you, good grief. We had the handbooks for each of the schools presented to us and they will be coming to the board next meeting for approval.
In just to piggyback off that, if you remember in the past, we hadn't done that for a long time. We instituted a new policy last spring that put that on. So that's why it's coming to all of you.
Any questions of Jen? Okay. Any board member comments? I think some have been made. Just take them to heart. People out there, we're doing our best that we can for your students, your children, and also for you that don't have children in school, that are taxpayers. You should be getting the budget booklet in the mail in the next day or two. Depending upon how fast the mail will move them. Please take a look at them, read them over. And if you have questions, there's a form to go and submit input back. We'd appreciate that input back. I just read I got a blurb from School Management Association about the possibility of more money being put into the education funding formula. But
Yeah.
that would require the legislature to go and pass the budget or pass that in the budget. That would have an impact. Be assured that the practice of this board has always been that if we get more money than we expected, we don't spend it. We might not be able to reduce the tax burden this year because tax bills have already gone out. The towns will have already done their computations, but that money will be set aside to be reducing the taxes in the following year. So we're not going to start building up big, huge funds. That's just not the way we have operated in my 20 plus years on the board.
Well, and if we remember, probably 5 years ago, Bob, after the budget was passed, we actually got more money, and the board voted to turn it back to the towns, which I think is always a good practice if we can do that. So.
All right. The next item is executive session. This does not need to be handled. So instead of an agenda adjustment, I'm going to call for a motion. If nobody will move and nobody will second, then we'll just let this die. All right. So entertain a motion to enter into an executive session pursuant to 1 MRSA 4056D, Regional Schools United for Education Association, MEA, Educational Support Professionals Negotiation. Is there a motion? Is there a motion? Hearing no motion, we'll pass over. Oh, did I hear somebody move?
Yes, I did.
All right.
Joe.
Okay. Is there a second? The motion will die for lack of a second, and we'll move on. With no other business to come before the board, I will declare this meeting is adjourned.
It is, I have 7:37.
Thank you all for attending.
Good night, guys.
Stay involved and stay safe.
Good night, everyone.
Yes.
Thank you,
Good night.
everybody.
Good night, everyone.